love this one. One thing I get asked a lot is why I would sell my LS6 350Z and buy a Corvette. Now, there's a bunch of really good reasons and a bunch of really stupid reasons, but I'm going to go ahead and kind of run through that. Now, I have built or fixed or worked on or owned or bought and sold a lot of cars, like a lot of cars. LS swapped cars, straight Chevy V8 swapped cars, almost all imports, BMWs, Mitsubishis, Mazdas, Nissans, Toyotas, everything. I've done 2J cars, I've done SR swapped Corollas, I've, kind of run the whole gamut of what you can do and swapping cars and playing with cars and going drifting and drag racing and stuff. I've done Honda. Really, it all kind of culminated in the 350Z. I got it as kind of an abandoned project that didn't run, didn't drive, didn't start. Ripped it out, rewired it, reassembled the whole car, pulled the engine a bunch of times, pulled the transmission a bunch of times because the GM Slave is a huge pain in the butt, and all of the lines that go with modifying those sort of things to go into the 350Z were just, a little bit of a pain. Now, it's not particularly hard, it's just hard to do right. I spent a bunch of time wiring in both the ECUs, both the GM ECU and the Nissan 350Z ECU, so that all of my gauges would work like stock. I'd have oil pressure and all of that sort of cool stuff. And from sitting in the driver's seat, it looked normal. The car sounded amazing, it made good power. It had all sorts of suspension goodies on it. It had mediocre Fortune coilovers, part shop max, lower control arms, a super angle kit, bushings and blah, 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 blah. Had an ATS, carbon, two-way, 410 gears in it. It hooked and booked, and it was a great time, but it was a swap car. And so everything needed to be made for it. There's stuff you can order. You can order the mounts, and you can order the headers and that sort of stuff, but once you get beyond that, you pretty much have to reinvent the wheel. And then even after all that effort, it's still in a 350Z, which is, it's pretty basic. Even after wrapping it and swapping it and having it loud and on super cool 3-piece wheels and all that sort of stuff, I'd still walk out in the garage and just kind of meh. And there wasn't really anywhere new to go with it. On top of that, it didn't have air conditioning, it didn't have cruise control, it didn't have a radio. The interior was Spartan. It had been completely taken apart and parted out and then bought piecemeal and put back together, and there's just kind of a lot of stuff that I didn't really dig about it. It was a super cool car, but it was good for one thing and one thing only, and that was going drifting. There was no making it a fun track day car, even with the 370Z brakes and big tires and big wheels. It was just kind of awkward because it was so intensely built for drifting. And it just seemed like a good idea to get a fresh start with something new to me, but something that I already knew. And so I went hunting for a car, and the C6 is what I end up with. But out of the box, the C6 is faster than a 350Z ever was. And to be honest, around a bend in the road, it's probably the fastest car short of the Evo 8 that I've had. And that Evo 8 made 500 wheel with a built motor, built stroker motor, and giant cams, and all sorts of shenanigans. This thing still has a stock airbox in it, and it's better. It just goes to show that even with all of the knowledge I thought I had and the experience I had setting up cars, driving cars fast, beating the snots out of them, Having a car that's set up from the word go to be a proper sports car is just leaps and bounds better. The initial cost was a little bit higher for me because I went for such a low mileage car. I think this thing only has, I don't know, I haven't hit 19,000 miles on it yet. I've been working on it, waiting for parts, so I haven't been driving it near as much as I want to. But if I was willing to buy something with higher miles or get an LS2 car, you're talking mid-teens for the entire cost of the car. And then parts are cheap. Parts are cheap, headers are cheap, cams are cheap, heads are cheap if you want to go that route. The idea with the LS3 car being a cam and exhaust away from making 500 wheel is just mind-boggling, considering with the 6060, I could put another 300 to 500 horsepower through this before I should really start thinking thoughts about my transmission. And that's really the crux of why I sold the Z. The standard T56 in it, man, even with a great shifter and a good transmission, great fluid, it still shifted like a tractor trailer. It was awful. I mean, you could get it gear to gear, but you definitely weren't banging it. And finding third was, you know, a little bit like your first time. You just kind of jamming it in there, hoping something happens. Sometimes it does. Sometimes nothing happens. Sometimes you get the dolphin and you grind third, or worst case scenario, you bang it into first and then everything goes to crap. Just dollars to donuts, it's a better car. It's easier to drive, it's got better manners, and it's faster. You could drive this thing every day if you wanted to. Not that that's a great idea here in Texas because you're going to get murdered by giant bulldozers, but I see people in traffic everywhere who do. This thing just goes without any sort of drama. Shift it with 2 fingers. Constantly finding myself going faster than I should. My only complaint with driving it is I already dented one of these Z06 wheels. I hit a pothole at an excessive speed, I'm sure. And I took a leather mallet to it and gave her the old 1-2, and that helped a lot. But I still have a solid vibration. Hello. The cammed supercharged CTS-V. Texas's cool cars. But the capabilities of the LS3 are, you know, just so beyond the LS6 or LS1, which the LS6 is a variant of. This is a car that makes 430 from the factory out the gate, and then they start looking at them funny at about 800. I wouldn't push it that far before forging the bottom end, but even once they forge the bottom end, man, a big old rock. Even once they forge the bottom end, they still keep the stock crank well into the quad digits, which is, you know, bananas. The LS3 heads flow better than any of the cathedral point heads. Like, you can buy an aftermarket head that doesn't flow as good as an LS3 head does stock. With the 6-liter cars, the LS3 head is the bang for the buck best upgrade. And that's what I got. Transmission, the 6060 is bulletproof. It shifts great. Like, they took every lesson that they learned from having the OG T56 be such garbage for so long. Made a great transmission out of it. The Z06 brakes I installed are incredible. This car stops as fast as it goes now, which is It's about as good as you can ask for in my book. I love this car. The Z was great. It got a ton of attention. It was fun to drive in the same way it's fun to date a crazy chick. You never know what's going to happen. Anytime you were out in it, you were going to meet people. You were going to be all over the road. You might break down. Probably not. I never broke it down. I had a leak one time. You might end up in the ditch. I'd say the police attention is about the same from the Corvette to the 350Z, although the 350Z green got a lot less attention than it did when it was purple. Purple was a good time. I had a lot of fun with that car, purple. The Corvette's more of an adult car than the 350Z, whether when it was purple or when it was green. At both those points, it was juvenile. Just I think because it was an import. People were surprised that the owner wasn't a 19-year-old. And that's probably because I built the car that I wanted when I was 20 or 21, in my 30s. And now I'm in my 30s, and now I'm building the car that I would have built if I'd had any sense earlier on. If I'd had any sense, I'd have bought one of these 10 years ago, probably. Would have been cheaper. Would have worked better. Would have broken down less. I don't really worry about people stealing this. Although I guess it's possible, but I don't think we're on the same level of theft worry as we did when I was driving turbo Hondas and any of the hot boy cars. Although I do have to say that the other Corvette owners I meet are largely douchebags. Elderly douchebags. Honestly, most of the younger people, and by younger I mean late 20s, mid 30s, Corvette owners I've come across are tracking their cars, or racing their cars, or beating the ever-loving snot out of their cars. Which, I support.